The Dutch were merchants, sailors, and explorers with capitalist abilities to innovate, creating sophisticated banking and capital markets. Henry Hudson explored the New World in 1609. The Dutch established a fur trade under the Dutch West India Company and settled around the tip of Manhattan, which became the capital of New Amsterdam in 1625. Legend has it the Dutch paid 24 bucks of glass beads for Manhattan. In fact, Peter Minuit, Director General of the Dutch West India Company, paid in goods worth 60 guilders to a Lenape band for possession of the island, worth about 900 bucks. The population of the colony rose to almost 9,000 when taken over by the English in 1664. The city became New York, named after the king's brother, the Duke of York, and future King James II. The Dutch were allowed to stay, including future rabble-rousers named Roosevelt. New York succeeded as a trading port, but became a center of slavery. Much of the banking and shipping included trading with the South. The indigenous population in New York was mainly Iroquois and Algonquin. The Dutch sailed north up the Hudson River to the area around Albany, while French trappers sailed south from Canada. The French fur trade remained a long-term presence. Rapid economic development had to wait for the Erie Canal. Indigenous farming centered on the three sisters of corn, beans, and squash, with apples and peach orchards common. Given the short growing season this far north, colonist farming tended to be small family affairs. Dairy cattle and other livestock became increasingly common. Maple syrup was an indigenous product adapted by colonists. Grapes and wine production became important later. George Calvert, first Baron Baltimore, received a royal charter from Maryland in 1632 as a religious haven for Catholics, but allowing tolerance. Less so for the Iroquois and Algonquin natives. The colony was settled around rivers emptying into Chesapeake Bay, mainly used as plantations for growing cotton. Unfortunately, tolerance also meant allowing slavery. Indigenous cultures included the Lenape and Iroquois. The Dutch, Swedes, and English all claimed areas around the Delaware River. In 1681, Quaker William Penn was granted a charter named by the king Pennsylvania, meaning Penn's Woods, which also included Delaware. Delaware became a separate colony early in the 18th century. Penn signed several treaties with the Lenape and other indigenous groups. Disputes between Pennsylvania and Maryland were not settled until boundaries were established by surveyors Charles Mason and Jeremiah Dixon in the 1760s. Pennsylvania became a diverse, large colony which stimulated industry of various kinds. Philadelphia was founded by Penn in 1682, emphasizing religious freedom. Penn laid out a grid system for a settlement of 10,000 acres with the first homes along the Delaware River. His system had a commercial center for a market, state house, and more. The property owners disregarded his plans and created a congested system with over 2,500 people by 1701. Benjamin Franklin arrived in 1723, making waves for most of the century. Philadelphia would play a big role in the upcoming American Revolution. Early in the 17th century, Dutch and Swedish colonists moved in. The British seized control of the area without a fight, creating New Jersey, presumably because the Dutch West India Company was unpopular. New colonists were granted land and given religious freedom. Most colonists were farmers living in log cabins. Fishing and trading were also successful. The Carolinas was claimed by both the Spanish and Virginia, which the native Cherokees, Creeks, and others weren't thrilled about. A patent for the Carolinas was established by Charles II in 1663 in gratitude to noblemen for supporting him. The territory was divided between North and South in 1729 as British Crown colonies. Settlers arrived to set up Charlestown in 1670. The Charleston slave trade, both Indians and Africans, was the largest in the colonies. The farms grew mainly tobacco, joined later by cotton, indigo, and rice. The plantation economy made it wealthy. Smallpox, malaria, and yellow fever outbreaks pegged the city as the unhealthiest in the colonies. Georgia was a latecomer, having to wait for a king named George, specifically George II. It was founded in 1732, the last of the original 13 colonies. It started when James Oglethorpe founded the colony with the thought of small farmers, the worthy poor, and no slaves. That ended, and by 1775, slaves numbered around 18,000. Using a plantation system, the first product was rice, followed by indigo and cotton. Okay, there were other colonies among the original 13. Maine, then part of Massachusetts, Connecticut, and New Hampshire. A French settlement started in Maine in 1604 with several small English settlements established by the 1620s. Fighting between the French and English continued well into the 18th century. Connecticut started as part of the Dutch New Netherlands, then an English colony established at Hartford from Massachusetts Bay in the 1630s. Fishermen settled near Portsmouth in 1623, and New Hampshire was established by 1629. Witches in America meant the intolerance of Salem, Massachusetts, starting in 1692. These were superstitious people rather than stupid, and this is an example of the delusion of crowds. Over 200 people were accused, suggesting it did not take much. Some of those accused were probably mentally ill, while most probably behaved differently than others, plus various religious disputes. Some number of vindictive people could accuse anyone for some made-up reason, including several teenage girls. The accused were given trials, although how one could defend oneself is as mysterious as why it happened in the first place. 30 people were found guilty, 19 executed by hanging, and others dying in jail. Another 16 people, mostly women, were hanged in nearby cities during the 17th century. We'll move on to what the colonies raised, cooked, and traded next time on Food History and Mystery.